By all accounts, 2020 has been an amazing year for the bicycle. Despite the pandemic, or actually because of the pandemic, bicycle shops have been doing gangbusters. Bikes have been sold out all across the country, all around the world. Will this supposed bike boom continue into 2021, 2022? Or is the bike industry going to drop the ball? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Before I jump into the meat here, I want to give you guys a little bit of background. This whole realm of non-competitive cycling is the world I've been immersed in ever since I got into cycling. Beyond the YouTube channel, I've freelanced for magazines like Bicycle Times, rest in peace, Momentum Magazine, rest in peace, and Path Less Pedaled really came out of the last bike boom, which was in 08, 09, that was caused by the big recession. So it's with that lens of a bike consumer as well as a content creator around this specific genre or niche of cycling that I'm going to look at what's happened in 2020 and kind of extrapolate what I think will happen in the future. And I want to kick things off with this little article that I think a lot of people might have missed. This is a printout from Bicycle Retailer. You can see I've done a lot of highlighting here. But look at that headline, bike market skyrockets with sales up 75% in April. That is just bonkers. Again, this was published originally on June 16th, 2020. It'd be interesting to see what this firm thinks of the most current data, but let's go back to June. So I quote, US cycling sales through all retail channels grew 75% in April to a total of about $1 billion in retail sales for the month. According to the NPD Group, so this is the firm that conducted this study, NPD says April was the first month since NPD began tracking the cycling market that sales have reached 1 billion in a single month. So the short of it is record sales, unprecedented. I think the industry made more money in that month than they did in the previous year. Skipping a little bit further down, the company said bikes for family use, neighborhood riding, and lower price points showed the strongest year-over-year sales gains. Lifestyle leisure bikes grew by 203%. So this is where this article gets really interesting. And I quote once again, "Far too long, the cycling industry has been solely focused on the pinnacle athlete. But these results show that a broader family and beginner focus can reap gains. This is a silver lining and one of the important sports retail lessons to come out of the pandemic," said Matt Powell, NPD's sport industry advisor. Matt Powell from NPD clearly points out that one of the biggest areas of cycling growth where the industry should focus is not in the competitive side, not on the quote-unquote pinnacle athlete, but on beginner cyclists, family cyclists, and more leisurely cycling, aka party pace, if you will. And he continues, "The excitement the consumers are showing in cycling, particularly in recreational and family riding, is an absolutely amazing moment for the bike community. This is a unique and powerful chance for retailers, manufacturers, nonprofit organizations to engage new riders." To engage new riders. I'm going to skip a couple sentences, but basically, and again, I quote, "The industry should be laser focused on servicing these new riders." Okay, so that's a conclusion that some analysts have reached after looking at some sales data in April. And what I find fascinating about this is that this is personally what I've always felt, but what I don't think has been reflected in the bike industry. So before I go on to the next point here, I want to make clear about what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that racing is terrible, that the performance side of cycling should be just gotten rid of, or that we haven't benefited from the technology and all that stuff from the sharp, pointy end of cycling. I will posit that maybe the bike industry has been focused just a wee bit much on that sector of the cycling market rather than looking at everybody else. And I think the pandemic of 2020 has really revealed lots of things, uncovered lots of misconceptions we've had about racing and its importance to growing cycling. If you look at the year, lots of sports cycling was canceled. They pulled off the Grand Tours, a couple of the classics, but generally local races shut down. Almost the first half of the entire year, very little racing was going on. But despite that, people have been buying bikes like gangbusters. So I think that fact that there was very little racing most of this year, but there was an extremely huge growth in bike sales decouples that relationship that we've always been told that the sports and the cycling drives the industry, and that's where the support, R&D, marketing dollars should be focused. Because this year, no racing, people still buying bikes. Granted, it is a lot more complicated picture. People were turning to bikes because lots of other activities were being shut down, like gyms, theaters, team sports. So people were looking for an outlet. So basically, through no merit of its own, the bike industry has sold a lot of bikes. And I can guarantee a vast majority of those people that bought bikes recently have no idea who Chris Froome is, probably don't know that there are other Grand Tours beyond the Tour de France, but they still bought bikes. I'm going to loop back to the article. Continued growth will require them, I'm assuming brands, bike industry et al., not only to have product in stock, but to focus on new riders' basic needs, such as how to fix a flat tire, locating a family-friendly trail to ride, etc. Addressing these basics right now has immeasurable ROI, and the industry should be laser focused on servicing these new riders. This is where I put on my pessimistic hat and say that the bike industry, all these brands have been given a huge gift, an enormous influx of new riders that have come to the activity. And currently, I think the bike industry has no idea how to retain all these new riders. And I base this on the fact that most bicycle marketing is always targeted at the enthusiasts, never the new riders. No money is ever thrown there. It's always towards pro athletes, that whole system. And again, I'm putting on my cynical hat. I've always felt that the bike industry views new riders as a group to graduate into racing or the sports side of cycling, but never content to really meet them where they are. I think there's always this assumption that one day you'll graduate from those flat pedals or that hybrid bike and you'll want to do a local cross race and do a century and all that stuff, and never content to serve them where they are and accept that that may be all they want to do. Basically, I think this is where the bike industry is going to drop the ball. They've received the pass, they're 5 yards from the goal, and at that last minute, oops, just completely unprepared to talk to this new ridership, to give them what they need, to make them feel welcome and comfortable, and to retain them. I'd be surprised if 10 to 15% of new riders stick around. And I know you guys think I'm super pessimistic, so let's see what the industry has done. So again, this article came out in June of this year, and one of its big suggestions from NPD Group was that the industry should be laser focused, with lasers, people, on servicing these new riders. Let's see how laser focused they've been. So I thought one thing we could do is check out the social media channels of some of the biggest bike brands out there and see how laser focused they have been on this new ridership. Since I'm a YouTuber, let's look at their YouTube channels. So first up is Specialized Bikes. Let's see their last few videos. We've got Spencer Rathkamp on a Tarmac SL7. Totally a person a new rider would know and a bike a new rider would probably buy. So moving over, we've got how to build a hot walk carbon bike. I'm assuming it's a carbon kids bike. Again, not something a new rider would probably get. Definitely still targeted towards the enthusiast. And then some cutesy Oh Delilah series, which doesn't really tell me much from the thumbnail, and if you're a YouTuber, you know that the thumbnail is very important. So there's this video here, support bike shops. That's great. Luke Strobel and the X Turbo Levo. Who's Luke Strobel? So that was Specialized. Let's look at what Giant has done. As their name suggests, one of the largest bike brands and manufacturers out there. This is their most recent list of videos. Let's see how laser focused they've been on the new rider. Adam Craig, don't know who that is. I'm assuming some kind of shreddy professional. Cross skills with Michael Vandemham, because all these new riders already know what cyclocross is and who Michael Vandemham is and want to learn. Okay, so more sports cycling, TCX Pro, nighttime visibility. Again, I'm still waiting for this laser focus. All right, so let's look at Cannondale. First video here, Cannondale Wave, Scottish Highland Adventure. So at least not racing off the bat. There is some kind of other travel appeal. Their previous video to that was flying high at the 2020 Giro d'Italia, and then something with EF and Rafa. Cannondale Factory Racing, Tour de France, blah, blah, blah. Just not seeing this laser focus from the bike industry. How about Trek? So last few videos, Trek Madone, Trek Damani Plus, some education. What's a horizontal dropout? That's kind of helpful. How to adjust it. That's good. Trek Powerfly. This might be the first video with someone not in full kit out of all the major brands. So a little bit of focus on the E mountain bike. Scroll down a little bit further. Again, 7 months ago, what are they talking about? Mars Peterson, always on. Trek Amanda SLR, crazy light, crazy fast. Yeah. So yeah, not seeing that laser focus on servicing the new riders that was suggested in June. Where am I going with this? 2020, massive year. 2021, proving to be a pretty big year in terms of sales. The handful of brands that we've spoken to, almost all the bikes are already pre-sold. There's issues with supply chain, unexpected demand, complications with freight, all those things adding up to 2021 being a really hard year to purchase a bike. What I'm really interested in is late 2021, 22, when things may or may not return to normal, whatever that looks like. Will all these people who have bought bikes in 2020 and 2021 still love them, still be riding them? Will they feel supported? Will they have that laser focused support like NPD suggests? On my perspective, what I'm seeing most of the brands do, the answer is no. They're going to assume that all these new riders are people that they just get to graduate up the enthusiast ladder. So I'm not expecting lots of communication from big brands trying to target and nurture this boon of ridership. I am seeing, however, bike shops take on this role, which is really important for them to do because they are usually that first point of contact with the new rider. But it'd be great to see that the bike industry, that these larger brands had their back. Because as we saw from 2020, lots of people bought bikes, probably had no idea who Michael Van Dam is or all these other racers featured in this video, but they're still buying bikes. And yet the industry is still pumping out the same kind of content, the same kind of messaging, which is depressing. So that's kind of my prediction on the macro scale, that a lot of these brands won't adjust, and down the line in a year or two, they're going to drop the ball at the touchdown line, whatever it's called, sports ball. But I'm just a pessimist, and I know that's a super depressing note to end on. So I will end on something a little bit more positive, and that is this: if you have come to cycling in 2020, if you're a so-called COVID cyclists, first off, welcome to that activity. I'm super stoked that you're riding a bike and that you've discovered the YouTube channel here. If you have no interest in the competitive side of cycling, I want you to know that that is absolutely okay. If you never want to have to clip in or get special pants just to ride a bike, regardless of what the bike industry, bike marketing is telling you, you don't have to do those things, and you're completely fine. It is rather unfortunate that the bike industry doesn't have a support system to nurture you as a new rider like they do with someone that wants to get into competitive cycling. There's literally coaches and teams to guide you along that path if that's what you choose. But if you just want to ride a bike, if you just want to commute, if you just want to go on short fun rides and make some coffee with friends, I hate to break it to you, there is no laser focus from the bike industry, but there are other sources to help fire your stoke. And frankly, you're going to find that from channels like mine, like Eric from Spindat, Michael from Locked In. There's a lot of burgeoning YouTube channels that are focusing on this non-competitive side of cycling. And for that, I'm super stoked. Another great resource is your local bike shop. Not all bike shops are great in doing this, but hopefully you will find one near you or at least online, and you can touch base and start to find your community, get your questions answered without being looked down upon, and finding other like-minded people who like to ride bikes just like you. So if you work for a bike brand and have anything to do with their communications, I strongly urge you to develop some laser focus on this new ridership, to not just do the same easy marketing campaigns that you've done for the last 50 years. Yes, sports cycling is important, but it is not everybody. In fact, if you look at the general population, it is such a narrow piece of that pie. You've been given a gift of all these new riders, don't blow it. And if you're one of those new riders that have entered into this activity of cycling and have looked around and been like, what the heck? Where are my people? I feel your pain. And that's why we make the videos that we do on this channel, because it's a big gaping hole. So welcome to the channel, welcome to Party Pace. And those are some of my thoughts of what's happened in 2020 and what I think will happen in 21 and 22. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe. We're almost to 100,000. And as always, keep the supple side down.